As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another.
Welcome back. If you love God and you love people, and you want to learn about tactics that armed protectors can use to respond to an active killer, then you're in the right place. In part 1 of this video, we covered how to engage, how to overcome fear in the face of a life or death situation, how to use layers of security to identify and address a threat as early as possible, and if we know there's a threat but we haven't yet identified that threat, using deliberate entry CQB techniques to gather info about that threat before we engage so we can be effective. In this video, we're going to cover more tactics you can use to respond to an active killer using the acronym EDCM, and that stands for Engage, Dominate, Communicate, and Medicate. Tactic number 1 is to engage, and we covered that in the last video, so if you haven't seen that one yet, stop watching this one and go back and watch that. Tactic number 2 is to dominate. Now, once we've identified a deadly threat, we want to dominate that threat. And we're going to cover tactics, gear, and skills that can help you do so. For dealing with an active killer inside the building, you want to be sure that some of your armed safety team members have their backs to a wall, where no one can sneak up behind them to ambush them first before attacking the rest of the people. If you're in a large building, you'll want to place your armed safety team members in locations that will minimize the maximum length of a shot that any one of them might have to take. For example, let's say your sanctuary is 50 yards long by 20 yards wide. If all of your armed safety team members are in the back and an active killer starts to hurt people near the front, they may need to take a 40-yard shot to stop that killer. However, if you've got one armed person near the front and the rest in the back, the longest shot any one person may have to take is around 20 yards. If you've got an armed person in the back, 2 in the middle, and 1 in the front, the longest shot is now around 10 yards. It's a whole lot easier to make a 10-yard shot than a 20 or a 40-yard shot. Once the threat is down, separate the weapon from the threat and frisk them to make sure they don't have any other weapons on them. Once the threat is over, make sure to holster up. You don't want to be flagging any innocent people who happen to be in that building, and you certainly don't want to get shot by first responders, the police as they're coming in, or if there's a concealed carrier in the congregation. So once that threat is finished, holster up, be concealed, and get rid of that pistol. When you're serving, carry a gun that you shoot well, not just a gun that's easy to carry. For example, you might have a micro 9, and micro 9s are great. They're thin, they're easy to conceal, they're super comfortable. But if you also have a bigger pistol, for example, something like this, that you can shoot better than you shoot the micro 9, well then when you're serving, man, carry this bigger gun, because no one who's ever been in a gunfight has ever wished for a smaller gun or for less ammo. Only carry appendix or strong side in a good quality holster that's going to protect to make sure the trigger cannot get pulled, that gives you good retention of your pistol, and that's going to stay attached to your body even when you're active and moving. Anybody who's well trained can easily get a draw to first hit of 1.5 seconds or less from either of those positions.
Stand by.
Don't carry small of back, pocket carry, ankle carry, or off body, because it takes a lot longer to draw from those positions. And the difference between a 1.5 second draw to first hit versus a 3-second draw to first hit can mean life or death. As we saw in the horrible attack on a church in White Settlement, Texas in 2019, a safety team member was killed while he was reaching for his pistol that he carried small of back. If he was carrying appendix or strong side, he may have been able to respond to the threat much more quickly. Carry at least 2 magazines. If you only have 1 mag and you get a double feed and you have to drop your mag to clear that malfunction, you're in big trouble if you've only got 1 mag. Also, if you have to keep a shooter pinned down in one location, you're going to want to be able to have plenty of ammo to keep him in that spot. Between my mag and my pistol and my backup mag in this little sidecar and the extra mags that I carry on me, I usually have about 90 rounds just in case a scenario like that comes up when I'm serving. I don't always carry 90 rounds on me, but if I'm helping with my safety team, I make sure I have some extra mags on me. It's also very important to carry hollow point ammunition, not full metal jacket, whenever you're carrying, really. But especially in this situation where if you were to shoot at an attacker and if you had a full metal jacket round, the bullet might hit that person and go through them and then hit an innocent person beyond them. So you always want to carry hollow points. And then one of the other excellent things, the way hollow point ammunition is designed, it's going to pancake out and dump all the energy into your target, which is going to do more damage to them than if you had a full metal jacket as well. So it's a win-win where you help protect innocent people and you dump more energy into the target that you're shooting. For armed safety team members, probably the most critical skill is having a fast and accurate draw to first hit. So I've done a video about that previously where I demonstrate how to go through a draw process from the appendix position. So if you haven't seen that yet, go back and check it out. It's about range training. Now, many ranges will not allow you to draw from a holster and do live fire. So if that's the case for you, where you don't have a league or a range where you can do that, of course you can dry fire. But a good solution for you where you could get some practice and some timing on what your actual draw to first hit and then actually see where you hit is if to do maybe an airsoft option. Like for example, this is an Airsoft Glock 19 and it fits exactly in my holster for my normal Glock 19. So then I can practice at home. Now, as far as measuring what your actual draw to first shot time is, if you're using Airsoft, it won't have the volume generated by a true gunshot to set the timer off on a shot timer. But instead what you can use, you could always, if you already have a shot timer, you can set a par time, and that way if you can get under that par time, you can get a pretty good feel of what your actual time on your draw to first shot is. And alternatively, if you don't have a shot timer, for free you can download many off of the App Store. So on my phone, for example, I downloaded one called ShootOnTime and it's completely free. So you can do the same thing, try it out. You can set your delay of how long you want it to wait from when you hit go to when it's going to give you a time, and you can randomize that time. And then you can set exactly what par time you want, 2 seconds, 1.5, 1 second, whatever it is. And then go ahead and see if you can get under that par time. Another thing that you can practice is dealing with an attacker who is wearing body armor. Now, typically we're going to shoot center mass, right? But if that fails to stop them, then we can transition and shoot to the head. And this is typically called a failure drill, where you'll do 2 to the body and then 1 to the head, or it's also sometimes referred to as a Mozambique drill. Know your effective range with your carry gun. If you're pretty good out to about 15 yards, but past that, not so much. And then if there's an active killer at your church and they're 30 yards away and then there's innocent people behind them, it's probably not going to be safe to take shots at them from 30 yards. You're probably going to have to move to get closer to make an effective hit without hurting someone innocent behind them. Now, however, if there are no innocents behind that attacker and potentially a really good backstop, like a really solid couple of walls or something, a good wall behind him where if you miss, it's not going to go through and hurt an innocent person, then go ahead and put rounds towards that attacker, because even if you don't hit them, it's going to get their attention and change their behavior and hopefully stop them from doing what they're doing, which is hurting innocent people, and get them to either try to take cover or turn their attention towards you. Also, if you're in the middle of a firefight with your adrenaline going through the roof and your heart rate going high, that's going to make it even harder to be accurate. And usually when we train at the range, we aren't in those conditions, but you can totally simulate that. So if you do some burpees, or you're carrying a heavy bag and running back and forth to get your heart rate up, and then you go ahead and shoot, then you can get a feel of what kind of impact that it's going to have on your accuracy. And of course, you can train with your pistol to get a lot more accurate at longer distances. You may need to have to get a headshot on an attacker who's wearing body armor, and that might be at a pretty long distance, especially if they're in the parking lot. Now, a lot of ranges don't give you a whole lot of room to practice with your pistol, like maybe it's 15 yards max. So you might need to go to an outdoor range where you can practice at 30 or 40 or 50 or whatever it is. Don't start at a huge distance, start closer where you can practice coming out of your holster and you get a nice sight picture. Exhale and have the gun nice and smooth, and then get a very nice smooth trigger press. For working on accuracy, you don't have to crush your grip. You just have to hold it steady while you get a nice smooth trigger press straight to the rear. So implementing these tactics, gears, and skills can help you dominate a threat. Particularly just the strategy of detecting a threat as early as possible can help you keep people safe. In addition to that, just by posting some of your safety team guys out in front of the church, it might make a potential attacker see that and decide they're going to go somewhere else where there's a softer target. So pray for the salvation and the safety of our people in our country. Tactic number 3 is to communicate. Communication is vital throughout the process of responding to an active killer. In the previous video, we talked about the importance of alerting the team if you see a deadly threat outside in the parking lot so you can lock the building down, call 911, etc. In the scenario that you detect a deadly threat inside the building, for example, you're in the lobby and you hear gunshots, get on the radio and communicate. Gunshots in the sanctuary. Armed safety team members can pull on a security sash to let responding police and others know that they're part of the safety team if they have time before they respond to that threat. Overwatch looks for any other threats and communicates information to the team. The designated communication member on the team contacts 911. Safety team members lock the doors to the kids area and other buildings and prepare to defend them if a threat comes to them. You could potentially also use your radio to communicate to other team members in a firefight. For example, if you've got a shooter pinned down, you could say, "Hey John, cover me, I'm gonna go flank him this way," and he can provide cover. Now when the threat is ended, get on your radio and communicate to your team members, because then the members of your safety team with medical training can go and help the injured. You want to communicate with the people in your church and help reunify parents with kids. You may need to move some people off-site or to maintain traffic or the lack of traffic in the parking lot so that first responders, your fire, police, EMT, can come in and help as quickly as possible and not be blocked. You will also want to lead those first responders to the emergency situation, whether there's a shooting going on or it's all finished, but there are injured people who need their help. Tactic number 4 is to medicate. So once the direct threat has been stopped, members of your safety team who are trained in the medical field can start to come and provide aid to anyone who's injured. And if you're a part of your safety team, even if you're not a highly trained medical EMT, you should carry some medical gear on you, at least a tourniquet. If there's an active killer event, there's a high likelihood that you'll need a tourniquet to save someone's life, either someone else's or your own. If someone is shot or stabbed in an arm or a leg and an artery is severed, they will bleed out and die in 2 to 4 minutes. However, if you've got a tourniquet, you can go ahead and stop that blood flow and save their life. And it's small enough that you can carry it in a pocket. So here's how a tourniquet works. First, you locate the wound where a person has been injured. So for example, if I've been shot in my leg, let's say around here, I locate where the blood is coming out, and where I want to apply this tourniquet is going to be 3 to 4 inches upward, upstream. And if it was on my arm, for example, if I was shot here, then I would want to come 3 or 4 inches up here. So it's always better to be high and tight with a tourniquet. And by that what I mean is, like, if the wound is here, you don't want to be just an inch above it. You want to go ahead and come up quite a ways to shut off that blood flow and stop that from happening. Now the tourniquet has a band, which we're going to use to wrap around the person. Now if it's just something like my arm, I can slip it over my arm. But if it's really big, like the leg, you can actually take it off. And if the wound was here, I would move it up a ways, 3 to 4 inches above that wound. And then I can go ahead and feed that through. And this other side of the band has Velcro, so I'm gonna cinch this guy up as tight as I can first, just by hand. Wrap it around with that Velcro, and that will start it. Now I'm going to undo this strap, and that gives me access to this, which is called a windlass. And what the windlass will allow me to do is to really tighten this up. And you do that by rotating it. So I'm going to start to turn it and turn it. And of course, if a person's been shot, this is going to hurt, but you got to do it. And you keep cranking, and maybe it's you that got shot, until the blood flow stops. You might have to crank it a bunch more times. And once you get it, you can put it here. And this is the windlass clip. So you're going to put your windlass inside this clip. And then, of course, we're going to put the strap back over it. And if you happen to have a Sharpie, you can write the time that you've applied this here. In general, you can keep a tourniquet on a patient for up to 2 hours before there are really any risks of ischemic injury. And then what that is a lack of oxygen or nutrients that's caused by that reduced blood flow to the tissues. So you're in pretty good shape. So that's our acronym EDCM, which stands for Engage, Dominate, Communicate, and Medicate. Tactics that can help you respond to an active killer. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of other great tactics that I didn't list, so please put them in the comments. And thank you so much. God bless you as you love God and love and protect people.